In January this year, in response to the new round of U.S. arms sales to Taiwan and its acts of sanctioning Chinese enterprises and individuals under various pretexts, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced that in accordance with the Anti-Foreign Sanctions Law of the People's Republic of China, China imposed a series of sanctions on some U.S. military industrial enterprises involved in arms sales to Taiwan. Among them, there were 5 particularly egregious companies. These 5 U.S. military industrial enterprises are Viasat Land and Armament, Alliant Tech Systems Operation, AeroV Ironman, Viasat, and Data Link Solutions. Measures include freezing their assets in China and prohibiting organizations and individuals within China from conducting transactions and cooperation activities with them at that time. Many people were puzzled. They said, "China sanctions U.S. military industrial enterprises. Isn't this a joke? Americans don't sell weapons to China. What's the use of your sanctions?" The answer is yes. It is useful. Very useful. Because the raw materials for the production of weapons by U.S. weapons producers are basically from China. That is to say, after China sanctions U.S. weapons producers, their production capacity will decline significantly, and the most important of which is the explosives production capacity. As an important raw material supplier of explosives for China, once sanctions are imposed on it and the supply of related raw materials is restricted, the explosives production capacity of U.S. weapons producers may indeed be greatly affected. For example, in terms of the key chemical raw materials required for some specific high-performance explosives, China's supply may have an irreplaceable position. Suppose the core component of a certain new type of explosive is mainly supplied by China, and the sanctions led to the interruption of supply. U.S. weapons producers may need to spend a lot of time and cost to find new alternative sources or redevelop new formulas. This will undoubtedly significantly delay their production progress and reduce production capacity. Another example is that China is the main supplier of certain additives used to improve the stability and safety of explosives. Losing China's supply, U.S. weapons producers will face huge challenges in ensuring the quality and performance of explosives, and then affect the overall performance and output of their weapons. In conclusion, China's sanctions against U.S. military industrial enterprises, by restricting the supply of key raw materials, can affect their production capacity to a large extent, thereby exerting an important countermeasure role. No matter how advanced and developed your thermal weapons are, it is impossible to have sufficient lethality without explosives. And the largest raw material supplier of explosives in the world today is China. When China issued the ban, many U.S. weapons producers stated that their raw material inventories were only sufficient for half a year. After half a year, either the U.S. government could find substitutes or they would have to bow to China for these U.S. weapons producers. The inability to rely on the U.S. government to find effective substitutes within half a year is sufficient to illustrate China's irreplaceability and dominant position in the supply of related raw materials. The failure of the U.S. government to take practical and effective actions reflects its weakness and helplessness in responding to this sanction. This may be due to China's absolute advantages in technology, production capacity, and market share in the related raw material industry, making it difficult for the U.S. to find alternative solutions in the short term, and these U.S. enterprises, for their own survival and development, had to initiate Plan B and bow to China, which further proves the power of China's sanctions. For example, a well-known U.S. weapons producer originally expected the government to solve the raw material substitution problem. As a result, half a year passed. The enterprise's production plan was seriously blocked. The inventory was exhausted. And finally, it could only choose to seek reconciliation with China. This situation also serves as a wake-up call for other enterprises and countries that may attempt to damage China's interests, allowing them to clearly recognize that China has sufficient ability and means to safeguard its core interests. The first to come forward was Viasat Inc. of the United States, and this company was the first to raise the white flag to China. The reasons why they became the first U.S. military enterprise to surrender to China are probably the following. First of all, these people were probably pushed out by the U.S. military-industrial complex as a pawn to test China's attitude. After all, the incident was quite big before, and these military enterprises had no idea about China's attitude. So someone had to go and find out. The second reason is that among the major U.S. military enterprises at present, it is the worst one, because not only do they need Chinese raw materials to produce products, but the worst part is that a large part of their market is also in China. In addition, in terms of market dependence, Viasat Inc. has an extremely high dependence on key raw materials supplied by China. For example, for a certain special material necessary for its production, China is the only stable and high-quality supply source, and there is no other alternative channel that can meet its needs. Economic pressure might also be a key factor. Long-term sanctions have led to the stagnation of its business and tight capital chain. Viasat Inc. may face a series of problems such as order defaults, loss of partners, and a decline in stock prices. In order to resume normal operations as soon as possible and get out of the economic predicament, it has to take the lead in giving in. Furthermore, considering from the perspective of industry competition, Viasat Inc. might be worried about being seized of market share by competitors during the sanction period. Other military enterprises not affected by sanctions might take the opportunity to expand the market and enhance their own status. As the saying goes, it's better for a friend to die than oneself. If Viasat Inc. continues to persist, its position in the industry will be in jeopardy in the future. For instance, enterprises of the same type, during the sanction period of Viasat Inc., increased investment in research and development and launched more competitive products, thereby attracting customers and orders that originally belonged to Viasat Inc., as it is not a purely military company. Satellite communication business holds an important position in the company's overall operation. The good cooperation between the parent company and Chinese satellite communication companies means that once affected by sanctions, this cooperative relationship may break, bringing huge losses to the company. Many of its subsidiaries conduct business in China. The revenue, market share, and future development potential brought by these businesses are crucial for Viasat Inc. After China imposed sanctions on them, it dealt a heavy blow to them. Their market shrank rapidly, and years of operation in China were wasted, especially in the satellite communication business. Many Chinese local enterprises reacted immediately and quickly seized the market after Viasat Inc. left the Chinese market. After all, China also has a lot of business in this field, and even the technology is more advanced. Previously, it was only because the American Viasat Inc. came earlier, so our enterprises continued to cooperate with them to avoid high liquidated damages. Now, because Viasat Inc. sold weapons to Taiwan and was sanctioned by China, it is unable to cooperate with other Chinese enterprises. This is not China's breach of contract, but Viasat Inc.'s own breach of contract. In conclusion, many Chinese companies that need satellite communication now say, Viasat Inc. Excuse me, who are you? Stay away from me. I'm not familiar with you. I'm afraid the Chinese satellite communication companies will misunderstand. It can be seen from the stock. Originally, Viasat Inc.'s stock price reached a maximum of $29 per share in January. But after being sanctioned for half a year, it now has less than $16 per share. basically losing half of its life. Other companies can still hold on with the orders from the US military. But Viasat Inc., a company with more than half of its business in civilian enterprises, really can't hold up. Of course, some people may not understand. These US military enterprises have sold weapons to Taiwan. Why can they escape accountability by admitting mistakes? In fact, it's not that they can escape accountability just by admitting mistakes. Admitting mistakes is only part of it. More importantly, if they want to be forgiven by China, they must stop continuing to supply weapons to Taiwan in the future. If we continue to insist on sanctioning them stubbornly, it is still the Taiwanese military that will ultimately benefit. An unfavorable situation may arise. That is, the Taiwanese military may obtain relatively more weapons supplies in the short term, because the severance of communication and refusal to forgive caused by sanctions may make some U.S. military enterprises give up and no longer care about China's attitude, and thus provide weapons to Taiwan without scruples. However, when a military-industrial giant bows its head to repent and truly stops providing weapons to Taiwan, this not only demonstrates the effectiveness and deterrence of China's sanctions, but also creates a relatively favorable external environment for resolving the Taiwan issue. After all, if we all refuse to communicate, negotiate, and forgive, then there is no such thing as avoiding providing weapons to Taiwan for the sake of raw materials and the market. On the contrary, if a military-industrial giant bows its head to repent and stops providing weapons to Taiwan, then we will certainly allow them to continue trading with us and profit from it. Just as the saying goes, 1,000 pieces of gold for a single bone. Western companies are, after all, just companies, not some strange fully automatic people destroying machines. For Western companies, profits have always been an important factor driving their decisions. When they clearly see the huge benefits brought by giving up improper transactions with Taiwan and instead conducting normal trade with China, they will indeed have a strong motivation to change their behavior. For example, a Western company that was originally sanctioned for participating in arms sales to Taiwan might re-evaluate its position when it sees that its peers have gained huge profits after correcting their mistakes and restoring trade with China, and might be eager to re-enter this huge and vibrant Chinese market. Or a certain Western company, during the sanction period, lost its market share in China, while its competitors were able to grow and develop in China by adhering to principles. Faced with such a contrast, for its own survival and development, this company is very likely to consider adjusting its strategy and give up the illegal collusion with Taiwan. In conclusion, driven by profits, Western companies are very likely to weigh the pros and cons and make choices that are more in line with their long-term interests, thus creating the possibility of improving the relevant situation. As long as they see the benefits in giving up collusion with Taiwan and trading with China, they will probably be eager to do so in order to return to the Chinese market to conduct business. This is a very typical overt strategy. Once a company bows its head and repents to China and regains the opportunity to conduct business in China, thereby obtaining significant economic benefits, this will undoubtedly set an extremely attractive example for other companies. For many companies, pursuing profits is the core goal of their survival and development. Seeing the successful cases of pioneers, other companies will inevitably be greatly tempted and inspired to follow suit. Even if the U.S. government tries to stop them, it will be difficult to hold back these companies' pursuit of profits, because in a market economy environment, enterprises often take their own economic interests as the primary consideration.